Hi, this is Tutor Nick P, and this is Music Lyrics Explained 27. We're covering the Star Spangled Banner, the U.S. Constitution. Okay, if somebody wants a screenshot, do it right now. All right, let's get right to it. It's good to note that the Star Spangled Banner is actually the second most commonly sung song in the United States. It is only surpassed by Happy Birthday, which is understandable because, everybody sings Happy Birthday for everybody's birthday, so we sing that quite a bit. Star Spangled Banner is also sung a lot because it's often sung at sports events, usually at the very beginning. And this could even be proven by the third most popular song is Take Me Out to the Ball Game. So if you go to a baseball game, you might sing both of these at a baseball game. All right, but let's get into the introduction here before we actually get into the lyrics. The Star Spangled Banner was written by Francis Scott Key. He wrote it while watching the bombardment of Fort McHenry by British ships during the War of 1812. So Britain was bombing us. They were fighting us actually again, because this is after the American Revolution. They kind of gave up on us. Now remember, we are not the superpower we are today. Britain was the superpower. They were the ones that probably, if they just kept coming, they probably would defeat us, but we would never give up. We would never give in, and we were just too much trouble. I think they kind of stopped hoping that we would just collapse on our own and fall apart, and they just get us back again. That didn't happen. So they started another war with us in 1812. It was only about, 30 years after we, set up our Constitution, after the Revolution was completely over. So that's the background here. All right. Now, it's also important to note he was inspired by the American flag that only had 15 stars at that time. So what he was witnessing, the British bombing it, Fort McHenry, of course, had the American flag up there. And that flag was a symbol not only of the country, but also it was the symbol of our freedom. Because if that flag did not fall, so we never gave up, we didn't lose our freedom. So that's kind of what this song is about. Okay. And remember here, of course, we're going to cover the lyrics. Let's look at the title first. Star Spangled Banner. Spangled means covered with points of light. Shiny objects. So basically the stars on the flag are the shiny objects. Okay. And banner is another word for flag. So that's why we call it the Star Spangled Banner. All right. Let's get into the lyrics now. So it goes kind of like this. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming? All right, so let me go over this. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn? So the dawn, the British were bombing the Americans at that time the whole night through. So this was probably about, the next morning as it was coming up, and he could see the flag. He could see the flag was still there. So by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we held, we praised, the flag. It was still there. The British did not completely defeat the Americans at that time. At the twilight's last gleaming. So from the night before, the twilight, remember here, if we say twilight, that's kind of like dusk. That's when the sun's going down. The time in the evening when the sun gets dark. That's the twilight. At the twilight's last gleaming. So the last little bit of light before gleaming means shiny, shining, before sunset. Okay, let's continue. Whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the rampart we watched were so gallantly streaming. All right, so what are we saying here? Broad stripe, the American flag had stripes, 13 stripes, and they were kind of wide stripes, so they're broad stripes. And the bright stars, of course, they're the stars on the flag. Through the perilous. Perilous, of course, means dangerous. Very dangerous. Very formal word for dangerous. Through the perilous fight. Aware is very old English. We don't really use this so much today. But it meant throughout a period of time. So throughout that time, the time of this battle, or the ramparts. The ramparts were the hills or stone walls built around to protect the city or castle. In this case, it was protecting the fort. We didn't want that fort to fail. Okay. We're so gallantly streaming, well, gallantly, bravely, streaming, moving freely and smoothly. All right, so let's continue. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. All right, so, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air. Now, often myself, when I've sung the National Anthem at ball games, sometimes I used to think of this line and say, why are we singing this? It sounds like we're kind of glorifying war. But I realize now it's not that at all. Remember, this is 1812, no electricity. This was the only way he could see the flag. So when the bombs were blowing up, they lit up and the flag was still visible. So that's really what that line means. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. So the bombs gave light. Because, no electricity, no lights. This is 1812. Electricity's not invented yet. All right, let's continue. Now we do the chorus. We're actually going to cover 3 parts of the Star Spangled Banner. Sometimes there's 4. To be honest, sometimes they only sing 1 or 2. Like at the ball game, I think we only sing 1 or 2. But here's the main chorus. So, oh, say, yet does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. All right, so this is probably some of the most important lines that's in the song is the chorus. Chorus often is. So again, remember that the flag is the symbol that we're still surviving, that we were not conquered yet. And we say the land of the free and the home of the brave. Well, that was the whole point. They had to be very brave. They were standing up against England. They were standing up against the British Empire, which was the strongest one in the world. Remember, when the Founding Fathers first signed the document of the Declaration of Independence, it was almost like signing a death warrant because they were so powerful that it was not likely that the American colonies were going to win this. And eventually they may have been found out and they may have been hung and killed for treason. So you had to be brave. You had to be brave to stand up to that. So that's what they mean. And they fought. They just would not give up until, they could be free. They could be free men. This is also very, very important because you have to realize around this time, it was really almost like 1,500 years or so. The last thing that was even close to a democracy was probably during the Roman Empire. And Europe was just filled with, monarchs and kings, and people really did not have freedom under that sort of system. Most people were really serfs. The soldiers were a little better off, but they had to fight war all the time. So this was important because this was the basis for our modern democracies. The U.S. surviving and getting a democracy with people free was important because many other democracies followed after that. And that's why a lot of our modern day people have a lot of freedoms that they didn't have for a long, long time before this. All right, so let's continue. All right, here's the second, the second part. On the shore dimly seen, through the mist of the deep, where the foe's haughty host in dread silence reposes. All right, so on the shore, dimly here just means the light is not bright. It's dimly. Okay, so dimly throughout the mist. The mist, like sometimes we say morning mist when the heat and the cold mix together and it forms those little bubbles. So that's what was going on. You had a mist in the air. Probably, of course, you're over the water too. More likely there's mist. That's where he, I think, was witnessing this bombing from. So that's why they sang those lyrics. So seeing through the mist of the deep, where the foe, of course, is enemy. Yeah, here, of course, anytime you say the foe right here, foe is enemy. Haughty meant they were proud and unfriendly. Well, they were the enemy. Remember, Britain was the enemy at this time. Okay. Yes. Haughty host. In the dread silence repose. So dread means fear. Fear of something bad. Well, it was the middle of it was probably the fighting had stopped for a period because it was the middle of the night. So it was it would be scary. Repose is rest or relax. So maybe even the British soldiers probably had to stop and rest for a period there. Okay, let's go on. What is that which the breeze o'er the towering steep, as it fitfully blows, half conceals, half discloses? So again, he's talking about the flag. So what is that? What is that which the breeze o'er? So what is that we could say? There's the flag. Flag's still there. We were not conquered. Yes. The breeze is, moving the flag, of course. The towering steep. Okay, so probably a very high part here of towering. Well, impressive or high area. Steep, of course, is a slope, a high slope. So it was probably up, on the fort. It was high up in the air. The towering steep. As it fitfully, here fitful is old use, meaning that something is stopping and starting. So as the flag waves, it could be kind of stopping and starting. Now it catches the gleam of the morning's first beam, in full glory reflected, now shines in the stream. So now it catches the first gleam, so the first light of the day. So this is as the sunlight is coming up again. Yes, so all right. I don't know if I covered. Half conceals, half discloses. Again, that was the way the flag moves. Sometimes the flag looks like it's hidden if it blows down. Sometimes you could see it more clearly. So that's what they meant there. Now it catches the gleam of the morning's first beam. In full glory. Glory here, admiration and praise. Remember, Old Glory is also a nickname of the American flag as well. Okay, good. Okay, what is this? Yes, okay, catch the first gleam. As it shines on the stream. So it's reflected. So, because he was on a boat, I think he was on the water, so he could actually see the reflection of the flag on the water as well. All right, let's get see. And then we go into the chorus again. So, 'tis the Star Spangled Banner, oh long may it wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. All right, so again, you could see it, and long may it wave. Well, may our country last for a long, long, long time. That's basically the idea. And now this is the last part here. Oh, thus be it ever, when free men shall stand between their loved homes and the war's desolation. All right, so free men. We're free. We were fighting for our freedom. They were standing up against Britain. It was, you had to be brave to do that, because chances are that if you lost, they were gonna be hanged or killed. Between their loved homes. Remember, back at 1812, America's lucky that we haven't had a war on our land for a long time. With the exception of Pearl Harbor, maybe. We haven't had it for a long time, but at that time, 1812, that was all in the U.S. So you were fighting there right around your homes. They could be burning down your homes, and war's desolation, causing great sadness, destruction. So even around this, you still had to stay strong. You still had to fight. Then it continues. Blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven rescued land. Yeah. Praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. So, Blessed with victory. Well, we didn't lose anyway. We probably lost a lot of battles, but we didn't really completely lose the war because we weren't completely taken over. And peace, may the heaven rescued land. Well, there's a feeling here that, at that time, remember, the original founding fathers were very religious. Maybe they felt that, God protected us. God looked upon us. Praise the power that hath. The power here is power of God. That hath is Old English for have at that time. So the power that hath made and preserved us, saved us, the nation. So let's continue. Then conquer we must, when our cause it is just, and thus be our motto, in God is our trust. So then conquer we must. So we can't lose, because we can't lose our freedom. We can never give into that. We can never back away, even if the power that is coming against us is much stronger than us. Okay. In our cause, well, cause is your goal, your idea. Basically freedom was the idea. Well, of course, is just, well, morally right, supported for good reason, basically. Okay. During this war, it definitely was. The revolution, it definitely was. Unfortunately, throughout the history of the U.S., sometimes we might have gotten in wars that maybe we shouldn't have gotten into. Maybe wars that, the American people might have been even tricked into getting into or lied into getting into. So we need to be careful not to let that happen. But still, most Americans wouldn't want to do it unless they thought it was the right thing to do. So for the American people, they thought it was just, even if they were fooled into it. Sometimes. Let's continue. Okay. And this be our motto. Motto means a stated principle or aim. In God is our trust. Now this is very, very important, because remember, like I said, the founding fathers were very religious. Remember when they wrote the Constitution, they wrote that our rights, our freedoms, are given to us by God. They're God-given rights. This was actually very wise of them to write this way, because they knew throughout the history of countries that governments, even if they're good now, they could in the future become tyrannical. They could turn bad. And whatever government can give you, a government can take away from you. But if God gave you your freedom, if God gave you your rights, then the government does not have the right to take your freedom away from you, because they didn't give it to you. God gave it to you. That was the whole point. So that's why in the song it says, in God is our trust. Actually, on the U.S. money, we do have that saying too. We say, in God we trust. We don't say in government we trust. We say in God we trust. Okay, and this is also important, that soldiers in the U.S., when they swear, they don't swear to protect the government. They swear to protect the Constitution. Why? Because the Constitution is the document that protects the freedom of the U.S., of the U.S. citizens. That's what it's supposed to be. So we really need to be careful there. So let me finish off the last line here. Or again, it's the chorus. O'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. So when we sing this song, we should always think about this. That's what America is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave. We have to be careful. We have to be careful that we're not tricked. We always have to stand up for this. We don't want to be the land of the sheep, for example, just following blindly whatever the government says. We should always question everything and make sure what they're doing is just too. And the home of the brave. Yes, you have to be brave to sometimes stand up for your rights. What is free. And just to end this off here, remember, there was one quote by Abraham Lincoln, and he said this: America will never be destroyed from the outside. Remember, there will always be outside enemies. And over time they change. I mean, nowadays, I don't know if they really are, but some people might say China or Russia is the enemy. Remember, during World War II, they were our allies. And, at the time of the 1812 war, Britain was the enemy. Okay, and, they've been our allies a number of times too. So the outside enemy could always change. Whoever's your ally today could be your enemy tomorrow, or vice versa. But the real enemy you really need to watch out for is the enemy within. If there's people within your own country that may try to bring down the country, they could be bought or sold off, so they'll sell themselves off, or they'll be paid off, or they'll put moles in there to somehow hurt. So that's the one that I think Abraham Lincoln is trying to warn us about too. So America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter, if we fail, and lose our freedom, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. And how do we destroy ourselves? By not continuing to stand up for our freedom. Or like in this, we say, in God we trust. There is some people that say that if we turn too much away from God, maybe, sometimes there's that divine power you hope will be on your side. So that's not a good idea to do that either. So anytime, if you're American and you sing this song, you should really think about the words. Think about what they stand for, and especially the chorus line of, for the land of the free and the home of the brave. We have to be brave to make sure that we stand up for our rights, make sure that our freedoms are never taken away from us, even from our own government, basically. So that is the point of this whole song, to do that. That's what our flag is supposed to represent. Okay, anyway, I hope you got it. I hope it was clear. I hope it was very informative. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.